However, let's talk about the big news flow over the weekend. The Supreme Court has banned construction in some states, citing a lack of comprehensive policy to deal with solid waste. The timing is worse. Lots of inventory in the backdrop. To talk about what this means for the space, let's get in a very eminent voice. Niranjan Hiranandani is MD of the Hiranandani Group and President of CREDAI. So joining in on this conversation will be Nayan Shah, the President of CREDAI as well. But Mr. Hiranandani, good having you. Thank you so much for joining in. From an industry body perspective, 3 states, and I would reckon Maharashtra would be the principal one. How big a roadblock would this be? Also, I want a clarity. Industry people that we spoke to over the weekend were divided in their opinion about whether this pertains only to new construction or whether this pertains to all construction, real estate as well as infrastructure. What is the update that you have, sir?
I've read the order of the Supreme Court, and certainly it does not discriminate between housing construction, road construction, metro construction, cross-harbour construction. It talks about all the constructions put together. Remember, the state government in Mumbai region alone is doing 2 lakh crores worth of infrastructure in terms of doing it. Building and housing industry would be another 2 lakh crores of rupees of construction activity, including affordable housing segment that we are talking about. And the worst of it all, 4 lakh workers are there in this region who are working on these projects. If the work stops for 30 days, 4 lakh people will not get wages on the 1st of October next month. It's a scary proposition. Believe you, all the rest of the things put together, and this one question of labor not getting wages next month is really horrendous. I mean, it'll be worse than a tsunami. So I think it's a very strong order, maybe a correct order in terms of saying that I want to put the states into the job and do it quickly. But remember, Maharashtra has come up with a clarification which appears to be something which was not communicated to the Supreme Court. And number 2, Nayan Shah, who is with me, will tell you about that already. CREDAI has already obtained an order under the same position of solid waste management for housing construction, where another bench of the Supreme Court has given a go-ahead to the construction on the same issue of solid waste management. So scary, scary, scary.
It is indeed, and that's what the view was of all the people. But okay, since Mr. Hiranandani mentioned Nayan Shah and telling us about the order that CREDAI has obtained as well, let's get him into this discussion. He's the President of CREDAI. Mr. Shah, good having you. Thanks so much for joining in. What's your sense, Mr. Shah? I mean, again, I think the same question firstly. I think Mr. Hiranandani has made it aptly clear that according to the order that, and the way he's perceived it, there is no distinction between old and new construction and no distinction between real estate or infra. Part 1 of my question is that. Part 2 of my question is something that Mr. Hiranandani was referring to, that CREDAI has obtained an order pertaining to some bit of construction activity. Can you brief us on that as well?
Hi. First of all, I would like to tell you that there is no need to panic. There is no need to panic at all. See, this is a technical glitch which has happened. The solid waste management policy was always, in fact, Maharashtra was always leading the whole country. It's just that, what has happened is that the affidavit, I am told, was ready, the draft affidavit was ready, and the Supreme Court, the date for the hearing was preponed. And this really took the advocate representing government of Maharashtra, they were not ready for it, and the necessary officer probably was not available to file the affidavit, and hence this delay happened, and it cascaded into this kind of an order. So, as I know very clearly that tomorrow morning, in fact, the government of Maharashtra would have done it today, but unfortunately, Honorable Supreme Court is closed today for Janmashtami. Tomorrow morning, the first thing, they are filing the affidavit. They are putting up the, policy note before the Honorable Supreme Court. And I think it's a matter of 1 or 2 days that, this stay, technical stay, I would say, would be lifted,
Are you saying,
so this is my view.
Are you saying, Mr. Shah, that you are confident that this is merely a technical glitch and it will get lifted? Because the reason I ask this question again is because when we heard the reports that came in on Saturday or Friday, as the case may be, it almost seemed as if the Supreme Court has said that the next hearing is on October 9th, and until then it stays as status quo.
Well, you see, if you read the last para of the order, what it says is, see what the bench was trying to say, that every state needs to have a policy on solid waste management. And this policy on solid waste management should be informed to the Supreme Court by way of an affidavit. Now, Maharashtra already has this policy in place. In fact, in Mumbai, for your information, Mumbai is far ahead of any other city in the country. It has clear rules of construction and disposal and waste management. It has clear rules on solid waste management. In fact, now, any development permission, any commencement certificate that is issued, it is compulsory, even if it means repairing your home. You need to take a miscellaneous approval from the municipality. If it is a project, you have to take a regular approval. And while you are taking the approval, you have to ensure that you tell them how much quantity of brass of construction and development waste is going to be generated, at which place are you going to dispose of that waste, who is the contractor who is going to do, and then over a period of time you have to keep a list of the trucks by which the truck number by which if possible the truck number by which the waste is disposed, the site at which the waste is disposed, so on and so forth. So there is a complete scientific place. There is just no need to panic. It's just so if you were to see that what is the Supreme Court trying to say, that the policy should be in place. Yes, it is in place in Maharashtra. So in my view, there is no stay, because the compliance is already done. It's just that you have to put it on an affidavit and inform the Supreme Court that annexure ABC is my policy.
Okay, Mr. Hiranandani, but it is not just related to Maharashtra, right? A couple of other states, the Union Territory of Chandigarh, etc., have also been put on notice. Let's assume that Maharashtra has this, and Maharashtra goes out and give this notice to the Supreme Court, and that is revoked for the state of Maharashtra. Any thoughts on the other states as well? They may not be so high on the infrastructure spend, but Madhya Pradesh certainly has a fair bit of infrastructure spend going on, cement consumption, workers, real estate sales happening. What happens in the event of those other states, the ban lasting at least till October 9th and maybe beyond that?
As I said, it is scary, but let's look at it dispassionately, as Nayan Shah has already said. Once the policy which has been brought into force by the Maharashtra government is actually emulated by the other states, I guess they would be forced to put it. I think the Supreme Court has come out heavily on this policy simply because the states did not implement these policies, did not have the rollout clearly. I presume that instead of having several years which it took for these policies to come out, the other states would also put their head down and really create out, copy-paste the policy of the state of Maharashtra and bring it into implementation. I think in a way, this is really meant to insist on the states that if you don't have a policy, the Supreme Court shall do this. Remember one thing, the same thing we should not take for, the state should not take it for granted. I remember when solid waste management took place in the case of Mumbai city, it took almost 2.5 years to get it lifted. So I think unless the states are absolutely proactive, which I think Maharashtra is, if the other states are not as proactive as Maharashtra has now putting it across, I think the other states will really suffer. And you've given the name of Madhya Pradesh. It's also a question of Chhattisgarh and the other places. So I think the state government should really move fast and really do this quickly, because solid waste management is a major issue, and I'm hoping to God that we don't have any such thing. It's a very, very, very strong statement from the Supreme Court that we shall brook no nonsense from any states or individuals.
Mr. Hiranandani, just in your experience, if indeed activities such as construction or real estate get stopped for a month and a half, or maybe slightly longer, does it have a material impact? I mean, I know it's a temporary impact on tile manufacturers, on pipe companies, on cement manufacturers. Does it get recouped in the months ahead? What would be your best guess about this?
Yeah, of course, in the case of production and other things, it does get recouped. But what happened to people who have lost 1 month of wages? If tomorrow Mumbai region has 4 lakh workers and they don't get wages for 1 month, how do you recoup that? It's unbelievable. I mean, people talk about the business of business, but what about the people affected in this whole situation? I think that's far more serious. So we will be able to recoup construction and other things if it does happen in the other states, and I'm hoping in Maharashtra it doesn't happen. But it takes a longer time for people to do it. It's a human suffering which is the biggest of all. We talk about GDP, we talk about the other losses which the economy will come to, which is of course significant, and we should see to it that just now when the economy is beginning to pick up again and the GDP rates are going up, this would actually be a significant blow in the total terms if it's not handled properly and if we are not able to convince the Supreme Court. But as Nayan Shah has correctly said, as far as Maharashtra is concerned, we are very optimistic that we will be able to convince the Supreme Court very early.
Okay. Fair call. Last question to you, Mr. Shah, on this discussion. Again, I mean, I just wanted to get a sense. I understand from what Mr. Hiranandani is saying that the loss of laborers is probably preeminent, but since we are trying to talk about the business impact here, do businesses which are home improvement or home manufacturing suppliers get permanently impacted, or does this kind of correct itself in the ensuing months if the ban is temporary in nature?
Well, actually, I would like to say that I don't know about the other states, Chhattisgarh or Madhya Pradesh, but I think all these states are likely to approach the Supreme Court in the next 2 to 3 days and have the affidavit filed and have the stay lifted. So I honestly feel that this will not go on long for a month or something like that. It will be over in 2-3 days because, under the Smart Cities program, one of the first precondition of the Ministry of Urban Development was that you need to have a solid waste management and a construction waste disposal policy. And each of this, see what has happened, try and understand. The hearing for this case, as I understood, was preponed by a few days or by a few weeks. It suddenly came up. So, as it happens in government, they generally are sleeping. So probably, they thought that they would file the affidavit. So in my view, I think in the next 3-4 days, this whole stay in all states is going to be over. It's not going to last so long as everybody is thinking about.
Well,
okay. And all the Supreme Court wants is that